In the spiritual boot camp we call novitiate, I got to know Father Mike Lisbeth. Many times when meeting you in the hall, he'd poke your belly, look at you with amazement, and say, "I know you, you rascal." It was endearing, the first few times. I got to see the child's soul in this warm man with a love for gummy bears. Father Mike also had his share of challenges. He was born with extremely limited eyesight and color blindness. Over time, he developed diabetes, a heart condition, stenosis of the spine, and finally Parkinson's disease. After encountering a blind beggar, the disciples asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus replied, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him." This man was a nobody in his society, nameless and excluded. The compassionate Christ spits on the ground, rubs clay on the man's eyes, and sends him to wash, where he gains his sight. Because Jesus performed this kindness on the Sabbath, teaching us that loving people trumps following rules, the Pharisees get all in a tizzy. They aren't too crazy about the man either, now a new disciple, and they say to him, "You were born totally in sin, and you are trying to teach us?" Jesus says, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind." In many ways, Father Mike was like the man in this Sunday's Gospel. He was not only legally blind, but truly lived on the margins of our society, excluded both because of his disability and social awkwardness. I'd like to say that in the novitiate I played the part of the compassionate Christ, but in fact was much more like the hard-hearted Pharisees. Father Mike would often do things for which I had little patience. 10 days in a row after dinner, he made announcements about the upcoming Raptors show at a nearby nature preserve, where wounded hawks and owls, now confined to cages, would be brought out for people to see. I had no clue what this had to do with Marianist spirituality, or why Father Mike thought it was so important to announce this again and again. It was frustrating. In the first reading, the Lord says, "Do not judge from his appearance. Not as man sees does God see. Because man sees the appearance, but the Lord looks into the heart." There was much I didn't see at the time, much to which I was blind. On Christmas Day, 2012, I received the shocking word that Mike had died. It wasn't until his funeral that I saw clearly the beauty and holiness of his life. Under the weight of such a heavy cross, he never grew grumpy or bitter. He reached out innocently for connection and acceptance. He believed strongly in God and never lost faith. He loved us. Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him. That afternoon, I drove back towards the cemetery and saw something I hadn't seen before and haven't seen since: a dancing hawk. Above the cemetery, a hawk was literally dancing, bouncing through the air as if to say, "Yippee!" I'm convinced it was Mike, that rascal who had identified with those wounded birds. I'm also pretty confident that upon entering heaven, he heard Jesus say to him, "I know you." We have much to learn from the so-called blind, the wounded raptors, those who are excluded yet yearn to fly. They can awaken our compassion and help us regain our sight. Our Lady of Perpetual Help, pray for us.